Hey there. Originally today there was going to be a video where I was joined by Merzane, the self-proclaimed leader of the Crossbones movement, to do an affiliation review for the Cabal. Unfortunately, something went awry and that recording is lost, so I will have a bonus video next week with a Cabal affiliation overview because that is a series I am excited to have continue as we draw closer to the 1-year anniversary of this game. I still wanted to have something for you all though today, and Facebook certainly provided me with a topic this morning. Today I want to talk about competitive and casual gaming both in the general tabletop world as well as specifically in Marvel Crisis Protocol's niche. My name is Nate, and welcome to the Gamers Guild. I will fully admit, this is a video I have looked at making at least 3 or 4 times now. I've gotten as far as halfway through drafting up my thoughts for the different points on my thoughts regarding the casual and competitive gameplay scenes before stopping myself because who am I to teach or talk about such a large and ongoing discussion across tabletop games in all arenas, from trading card games like Magic to board games like Catan and pretty much all of the miniature games I can think of off the top of my head. But I think it is a very important topic to discuss, one that is often shied away from, even though it is so important to a game's growth, which is why I wanted to talk about it today. So please, bear with me in my stream of thought. Who knows, maybe I'll have at least one good nugget of wisdom to share that can help bring in new players to a playgroup, or even diversify an existing one. With that out of the way, I'm just going to throw myself into the deep end here and say games thrive when they are able to sustain multiple styles of play. If a game is able to appeal to different play groups, the more likely that game is to grow and thrive. The best example of this that comes to mind is Magic the Gathering. This game has a huge player base and multiple formats where the types of cards allowed to be played and even some of the core rules will shift from format to format. Within Magic, there are events that are streamed and have thousands of dollars in prize pools for players to earn, to the point where the top players are able to live as competitive Magic players. On the flip side, one of the common phrases in that community is kitchen table play, where after maybe getting a starting deck, a few singles, and cards from random booster packs, you and your friends throw down with just some fun decks that can pull off cool synergies and ultimately just have fun. Currently, Magic's most popular format is one that I even have 3 or 4 decks for. It's called Commander or Elder Dragon Highlander, a format that was originally designed by the players and was then adopted as an official one once Wizards saw its potential. I know I'm talking a lot about a different game here, but I'm almost done, so bear with me. Commander is mostly seen as a casual format because there are no big tournaments with large payouts, and because it's a multiplayer format with the optimal number of players usually being around 4. With that, the usual game is played over the course of 9 to 14 turns, and it lets players build up their forces of spells, enchantments, and creatures to do some awesome things. There is also a competitive side to this format, with decks that can consistently win on turn 3 or 4 if they go unchecked. So if I myself go into a game expecting 10 turns, and my first few turns are building up resources to do something big on turn 5, and then I'm suddenly undercut by someone just winning on turn 4, it's a bad experience. Thankfully, this hasn't happened in quite some time to me though, because me and my local playgroup, or meta, have established a good way to communicate what level we are wanting to play. So the key to a good game experience, and any good game experience, is communication. And this applies to pretty much any game where you are bringing your own list against someone else's. That list can take the form of a deck, an army, a squad, a roster, and so on. I have 2 personal experiences where there was not enough communication over time about the level of play, and it ended up being a bad experience for at least one half of the table, which is all it takes to kill a local community. My first experience was with War Machine and Hordes. There was a local community that had a decent size, and I wanted to jump in and try it out. The third edition had just launched, so I participated in a slow grow league, and it started out fine. I was playing other people new to the game and having some fun, but as the league grew higher in points and in dollars, only some of the veteran players ended up still playing towards the end. And these guys knew their stuff. They would get together for practice games to test certain lists against certain other lists and strategies, all just to hone themselves for tournaments in different states and all of that. As a mostly new player, I didn't stand much of a chance. So game after game I lost, but I never communicated that I wanted help learning or for them to walk me through their line of thought in different plays, and eventually I stopped going out because it wasn't fun for me anymore. Then on the other side of that coin, I have been the player that had a bit too much power. After stepping away from the War Machine world, another store was having a slow grow league but for Age of Sigmar. The system had just recently started using points, and I was excited to dive into a new community and game. I wanted to play as some Wood Elves, but they weren't really a part of the new system, so I opted to play one of the newest factions in the Sylvaneth, who are basically the Tree People. I wasn't trying to be uber competitive, and by the end of the league, I was using at least one of every kind of unit available to me, except for a couple of the big hero units. But I realized about halfway through the league that my army was simply more powerful than some of my opponents. When I would have one of my units take a flank and tear through a hero or strong cavalry unit all by themselves without suffering too many losses, I knew that something was off. Games Workshop has been known to let whatever is their newest product have fun new tricks to outshine some of the older tricks, and that very well may have been the case here. But regardless, I realized some of my opponents just weren't having fun playing against me. It wasn't too long after that a new edition of 40k was released and drew most of the players into the familiar arms of the grimdark future, and the Age of Sigmar community quickly dried up. Both of these experiences could have been resolved with earlier and better communication amongst one another. So here we are with what has quickly become my favorite miniature game of all time, and I think we are uniquely situated as Marvel Crisis Protocol has a lot of appeal to both a casual and competitive crowd. The casual and narrative side of this game is amazing. Whether it is the chilling moments you can see come to life in a normal game, when Thor charges into your opponent's ranks, knocking them around with his hammer, or his brother, or maybe even just Captain America never surrendering with his insane defenses. There's just so much awesome packed into those moments, but then we also have things like the ultimate encounters against the likes of Hulk, Ultron, and Thanos. And soon we'll even have the Vibranium heist for a new kind of narrative experience that I'm really excited for. This side of the game is what makes it such an excellent gateway game or entry point into the miniatures world. And to boot, this game has some of the best defined rules that make the game pretty easy to pick up and enjoy the system. And it also leaves everything very clear when you're needing to figure out an interaction. All of the characters are pretty well balanced, and with the unlocked potential of combining any characters together into one single team, the list building possibilities are nearly unlimited. And all of these things attract some more competitively minded players because the tight rules and balanced gameplay means that they can show off the best of what they have against the best that their buddies have to offer. And then they can face off to let their strategy shine. While MCP is not even a year old, we have seen 2 well-known games canceled and a few others suffer in the past year. Marvel has then drawn in these new gamers from those old communities, as well as people who are just wanting to have something to do during the lockdown. So the game really has a great appeal to people who are experienced gamers and those who are new to the hobby. To make this video come full circle, I want to talk about one of my friends I met through playing Magic a couple of years ago. Patrick had been playing a little bit longer than me, but not by much. We've gotten to play endless hours of games together and had some fun jabs at each other as well, as we grew as players, getting better at the game and upgrading our decks. I eventually got to a point where, as I mentioned earlier, I have 3 or 4 commander decks that are all at various levels of play, from a silly deck building challenge that I never want to take apart, to a highly tuned spell-slinging dinosaur. But I ultimately found the level of play that I enjoy the most. Patrick then continued to grow and now has a couple of those win the game on turn 4 decks. But he hardly ever plays those decks against any of mine because we know the poor play experience that it creates. So on Thursday nights, we get to have our long games with powerful plays that include armies of rhinos taking on ghosts and whatever else. And on Mondays, Patrick would get to go and play with some of his superpowered decks against other like-minded players. So again, as I look at Marvel Crisis Protocol, a game that isn't even a year old, and see the support that it has on Facebook and the support shown for even just this channel, I know I'm looking at a game that has a chance to become a pillar of the miniatures game community, and hopefully one of the most welcoming ones. One of the reasons I think MCP has a chance to even eclipse the likes of Magic in its melding of the casual and competitive players is with its unique roster system. Instead of having to search through a deck and take out 10 cards and replace them with a couple of better or worse cards, we can simply exchange a tactic card and maybe a couple of characters to change the level of roster that you've built. So I guess my call to action is to be a Patrick. Be willing to accept that different people are going to enjoy the same game in different ways. As a player, be able to bring up the conversation of what power level you are wanting to play at, or ask what your opponent is feeling, and that'll be strides in the right direction. If you can play both sides of the line like Patrick and enjoy just getting to play the game even better. For the more competitive players, I ask and nearly beg of you to be able to use your experience to teach newer players and bring them into the community. Maybe have a toned down roster or two that is missing some key tactic cards or characters to help balance yourself so that you can help new players grow and enjoy the experience. And heck, even throw down in the occasional narrative experience like Vibranium Heist or an Ultimate Encounter. They are a ton of fun and extremely well designed. For the casual players, be accepting of the people who are playing a bit of a more tuned game, and be forgiving when someone plays something unexpectedly powerful or overwhelms you. I mean, in my latest battle report, Evan played an entirely in-affiliation list, with the exception of Shuri because there were no other 3-threat defenders, and spoiler alert here, I got smoked. Like, I don't think I have seen a wider point difference in any MCP game than 2 to 23. But Evan wasn't trying to bring the hottest list with obscene dice, he was just trying out some new characters that performed really well. So if you get crushed one game, share the feel-bads with your opponent, and if they don't change up how aggressive they are playing, then stop playing with that person. But since this is still a relatively pretty small game, there's going to need to be flexibility on both sides for this game to continue to grow. So go and play casually. Obviously, Atomic Mass Games is wanting to support this side of the game with narrative events, and even their normal game days prize support is based on playing and the hobby, not how well you place in a tournament or anything. At the same time, go and tune and refine your list, because Atomic Mass Games has made a tight set of rules and well-balanced characters so that you can go and test your mettle against other players. Just make sure your opponent is of the same mind. For game day organizers, something that I have done on the roster sheet is put a couple of little boxes for players looking for casual games or competitive games to check off so that they can be playing against like-minded opponents who are maybe new and looking to get their 3rd or 4th game in, or for the players looking for a challenge and bragging rights. Really though, at the end of the day, there is not a wrong way to play this game. Go and have fun doing what you enjoy. Sure, if you and another player cannot find common ground to play on, then that sucks, and you don't need to change how you want to play the game if you don't want to. However, you shouldn't start insulting or accusing anyone just because they play or view the game differently than you. The game is growing because of both sides of this coin, and really, that means we all win. Here on the Gamers Guild, I hope to try and bring useful information and entertainment for both sides of the game, usually leaning towards being a good resource for newer players. There are, of course, the occasional videos that have some discussion and thoughts for higher levels of play for anyone who is looking for that, though. So if you are still here after listening to my TED Talk, thank you, and I hope there was something in this that will help your community grow. I want to, as always, throw a thank you to the members of the Guild Hall for supporting the channel. With their support, I've been able to acquire a new editing software that will allow for some visually interesting videos in the near future as I figure out the new program and all of the tools that it has. If that is something you are interested in learning about or supporting me here, there will be a link down in the description, and if you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to message me at either of the links down below. As always, thank you all for watching, And until next time, keep on gaming.